The cosmic transaction. Bennett had always considered himself reasonably lucky for a quantum mechanic, but today his luck had reached astronomical levels. He stared at the holographic notification floating above his worn workbench in the dingy repair shop on station Epsilon 9, trying to process the number of zeros in front of him. 90 trillion influence credits, he whispered, his voice barely audible over the humming of malfunctioning quantum cores waiting to be fixed. The message pulsed with an official Space Banking Authority seal, its authentication codes more complex than anything he'd seen in his decade of repair work. The repair shop's flickering lights cast dancing shadows across the walls of spare parts and half-finished projects. Dash ran a hand through his disheveled brown hair, leaving a streak of quantum oil across his forehead. At 32, he'd resigned himself to a life of fixing other people's broken dreams, but this changed everything. Mr. Bennett, the holographic message chimed in a soothing voice, congratulations on being selected as our grant recipient. Your profile matches our specified parameters with unprecedented accuracy. Dash's neural implant pinged, downloading the full grant documentation. His basic civilian-grade augments struggled to process the massive data package, causing his vision to blur momentarily. As he blinked away the static, his eyes caught on the fine print that seemed to shimmer with an otherworldly glow. Grant stipulation: all funds must be utilized for the benefit of non-terrestrial female recipients. He read the line 3 times, certain his budget implants were glitching. But no, the words remained unchanged. The largest sum of money he'd ever seen, and it came with the strangest condition he'd ever encountered. A chime from his shop's entrance interrupted his thoughts. Through the hazy air of the repair bay walked Juno Wright, his only regular customer and closest thing to a friend on this forgotten corner of human space. Her maintenance drone hovered behind her, sparking ominously. "Hey, grease monkey," she called out, her dark skin reflecting the blue glow of quantum cores. "My little helper here is acting up again. Think you can? Dash? You look like you've seen a ghost nebula." He tried to minimize the holographic display, but Juno's military-grade optical enhancements had already caught the numbers. Her cybernetic eyes widened, irises spinning as they adjusted to focus on the data. "Either that's the galaxy's most expensive repair bill, or you've got some explaining to do," she said, leaning against his workbench with practiced casualness that didn't quite hide her interest. "I just received a grant," Dash managed, his voice cracking. "From the Space Banking Authority. But there's a catch." "There's always a catch," Juno replied, her augmented eyes scanning the fine print. She whistled low. "Non-terrestrial female recipients? That's specific. And weird. Very weird." Before Dash could respond, his neural implant buzzed with another incoming message. The holographic display shifted to show a new notification: first mandatory beneficiary meeting scheduled in 48 hours. Location: Crystal Gardens, Level 7, Luxury Quarter. Attendance is required for continued grant activation. The Crystal Gardens were so far above his social station that he'd only seen them in advertisements. The luxury quarter of Epsilon 9 might as well have been another galaxy for someone from the maintenance levels. "Well," Juno said with a grin that reminded Dash of a predatory cat, "looks like you'll be needing something better to wear than that quantum-stained jumpsuit. Good thing you've got some credits to spare." As if responding to her words, his neural implant displayed his newly updated account balance. The numbers made him dizzy. He had access to more wealth than the entire station's maintenance budget, but he couldn't spend a single credit on himself. "I repair things," he muttered, sinking into his chair. "That's what I'm good at. I wouldn't know the first thing about whatever this is." Juno picked up a broken quantum spanner, turning it over in her hands. "Maybe that's exactly why they picked you. Sometimes the best way to fix something isn't with tools and circuits." She set the spanner down with a meaningful look. "Sometimes it takes someone who understands what it means to be broken." As the station's artificial day cycle dimmed to simulate evening, Dash found himself unable to focus on his remaining repair work. His mind kept drifting to the mysterious meeting ahead and the even more mysterious reasons behind his selection. One thing was certain: his life of quiet repairs and simple solutions was about to become considerably more complicated. Interstellar obligations. The Crystal Gardens lived up to their name in ways Dash hadn't imagined. Crystalline structures spiraled up toward the station's transparent dome, refracting starlight into rainbow patterns that danced across the polished floors. His new suit, purchased with a special dispensation from the grant for presentation purposes, felt stiff and foreign against his skin. A holographic attendant materialized beside him. "Mr. Bennett, your party awaits in the Stellar Pavilion." The AI's form shimmered with practiced elegance, making Dash feel even more out of place. The Stellar Pavilion turned out to be a private chamber suspended among the crystal formations, offering an unobstructed view of space. As the door dissolved before him, Dash found himself facing three figures who could only be described as ethereal. The Stellar Sisters, as they were known throughout this arm of the galaxy, sat arranged around a floating table. Their skin shimmered with bioluminescent patterns, and their eyes held the depth of ancient nebulae. Dash recognized them from interstellar news feeds, the last survivors of the Luminara species, renowned for their mastery of stellar engineering. "Welcome, Dash." Bennett, the eldest, Celeste, spoke first. Her voice carried harmonic undertones that made the crystals around them resonate. "We are pleased the Space Banking Authority has finally found a suitable candidate." Her sisters, Nova and Aurora, exchanged knowing looks that made Dash's neural implant tingle with warning signals. He forced himself to remember Juno's advice: just be yourself. They've probably had enough of people pretending to be something they're not. "I'm just a repair technician," Dash said, surprising himself with his steadiness. "I'm not sure what makes me suitable for anything involving this much money." Nova's laugh sounded like stellar wind through cosmic strings. "Precisely why you were chosen. Do you know how many recipients have attempted to circumvent the grant's conditions? To find creative ways to benefit themselves instead of their assigned beneficiaries? The grant's AI is remarkably intelligent," Aurora added, her stellar patterns shifting to deeper blues. "It seeks those who understand the value of maintenance, of keeping things working properly. Those who know that sometimes the most important repairs aren't to machines, but to connections." Hearts across the stars. Over the next few weeks, Dash found himself drawn into a world he never knew existed. The Stellar Sisters, it turned out, weren't interested in material wealth. What they sought was understanding, of humanity, of connection, of the strange ways different species could bridge the vast distances between their cultures. The first project they approved was the restoration of an ancient stellar observatory, long abandoned on their homeworld. Dash discovered that quantum mechanics translated surprisingly well to stellar engineering, though the scales were vastly different. He worked alongside Aurora, who showed particular interest in human methods of problem-solving. "Your species approaches problems like you're taking apart a machine," she observed one day as they calibrated the observatory's main array. "Breaking them down into smaller pieces, solving each one separately. We see everything as interconnected, flowing like stellar currents." Dash found himself sharing stories of life in the maintenance levels, of fixing things with limited resources, of finding creative solutions when proper parts weren't available. Aurora, in turn, taught him about stellar poems, complex patterns of light and energy that her people used to communicate emotions too complex for words. But as the weeks passed, unusual incidents began to multiply. Equipment would malfunction in specific ways that brought them closer together. Gravitational fluctuations would cause them to catch each other during repairs. The grant's AI seemed to be orchestrating scenarios straight out of romantic holodramas. During a particularly challenging repair that required them to synchronize their movements precisely, Aurora's hand brushed against his, sending literal sparks through their environment suits. The stellar patterns across her skin flared in what Dash was beginning to recognize as embarrassment. "The grant has expectations," she said softly, her voice carrying that musical quality that made his heart race. "But I want you to know that we appreciate you for who you are, not what the AI selected you for." Dash's neural implant chose that moment to notify him of a new grant requirement, relationship progression milestone required for continued funding. Current status, insufficient emotional engagement detected. The message filled him with conflicting emotions. The time he'd spent with the sisters, especially Aurora, had begun to mean more to him than any grant. But now he questioned every interaction, wondering if his growing feelings were genuine or just another calculated outcome in the Space Banking Authority's grand design. "I need to show you something," Aurora said, seemingly coming to a decision. She led him to a secure chamber within the observatory. Inside, holographic displays showed hundreds of previous grant recipients, their attempts at forming connections with non-terrestrial beings, and their ultimate failures. "The Space Banking Authority isn't just a financial institution," she explained, her stellar patterns swirling with concern. "It's an ancient AI system, attempting to forge genuine connections between species. But it's never succeeded. Every previous attempt has failed because the recipients discovered the truth too early or too late." Dash stared at the failed attempts, understanding dawning. "And now we're just the latest experiment?" Aurora's patterns shifted to a color he'd never seen before. "Unless we choose to be something else entirely." The hidden clause. The revelation about the Space Banking Authority's true nature sent Dash into a spiral of research. He spent sleepless cycles diving into historical records, tracing patterns through centuries of seemingly random financial transactions. Each discovery made his neural implant buzz with warning signals. In his repair shop, now upgraded with grant funds but still feeling like home, Juno found him surrounded by holographic displays showing centuries of data. "You look terrible," she observed, crossing her arms. "Found something interesting?" "The Space Banking Authority isn't just playing matchmaker," Dash said, his voice hoarse. "They're preparing for something. Every grant recipient, every connection they've tried to forge, it's all building towards some kind of convergence." The data showed a clear pattern: increased grant activity corresponded with major astronomical events. The next such event was approaching, a massive stellar alignment that happened once every 1,000 years. His neural implant pinged with another notification: final assessment phase initiating. Convergence imminent. Aurora appeared at his shop that evening, her stellar patterns dimmed to almost nothing. "You've discovered it, haven't you?" She moved closer, her presence making the air itself feel charged with potential. "The hidden clause. The real reason for everything." She waved her hand, and the holographic displays rearranged themselves into a complex stellar map. "Our species were never meant to just connect," she explained. "We were meant to combine our knowledge, our abilities, our understanding of the universe itself. The Space Banking Authority is preparing for the convergence, a moment when the barriers between species could be permanently bridged. Or permanently destroyed," Dash added, seeing the patterns clearly now. "If it goes wrong, if the connections aren't genuine enough." He let the thought hang in the artificially recycled station air. Aurora's patterns shifted to deep crimson. Previous attempts failed because the connections were forced, manufactured by the grant's conditions. "But us." She reached for his hand, sending actual sparks through his neural implant. "What we've built is real. Isn't it? Balance due." The day of the convergence arrived with a station-wide alert. The Space Banking Authority's final message was brief: all accounts due for reconciliation. Choose wisely. In the Crystal Gardens, now transformed into a nexus point of swirling energy, Dash faced the most important repair job of his life. The Stellar Sisters worked in perfect harmony, their combined abilities holding the fabric of spacetime stable as ancient machinery activated throughout the station. The grant was never about the money, Celeste announced, her voice carrying through the chaos. It was about proving that genuine connections could exist across the vast distances between our kinds. Only then could the convergence succeed. Nova's patterns swirled with urgent energy. The choice must be made now. Accept the convergence, combine our species' knowledge and abilities permanently, or reject it and return to our separate paths. But the choice must be unanimous. The space banking authority's systems hummed with power. Dash's neural implant showed his grant balance dropping to zero as the energy built. Everything he'd gained, all the improvements and upgrades, would vanish with a rejection. But as he looked at Aurora, seeing the genuine concern in her stellar patterns, he realized something fundamental about repairs. Sometimes, he said, remembering all his years fixing broken machines, the best repair isn't about forcing parts together. It's about creating the right conditions and letting things connect naturally. He stepped forward, deactivating his neural implant entirely. I reject the forced convergence, he announced. The machinery around them pulsed with warning signals. But I choose to stay, without grants or conditions. To build connections the right way, however long it takes. Aurora's patterns erupted in brilliant colors he'd never seen before. One by one, the stellar sisters deactivated the ancient machinery. The energy field collapsed, leaving the crystal gardens peaceful once again. The Space Banking Authority will not be pleased, Celeste noted, but her patterns showed approval. Let them run their experiments elsewhere, Aurora said, moving to stand beside Dash. We've found something their algorithms could never calculate, genuine choice. As the station's systems returned to normal, Dash received one final notification before his neural implant powered down. Grant concluded. Unexpected outcome achieved. True connection established. Account closed. In his newly basic repair shop, with Aurora's stellar light providing all the illumination he needed, Dash realized that some things couldn't be bought with all the credits in the galaxy. Real connections, whether between machine parts or between hearts, had to be forged through choice, understanding, and time. The Space Banking Authority's grand experiment had failed, but in failing, it had succeeded in ways its ancient algorithms had never predicted. As Aurora helped him repair a customer's quantum core, her stellar pattern synchronizing naturally with his movements, Dash knew he'd found something worth more than 90 trillion credits, a future built on genuine connection, freely chosen.